The Cape Crusaders getting pulled from the comics. Here's your look at the McFarlane toys. DC Direct Page Punchers Batman. As a child, Bruce Wayne watched as his parents were brutally killed in Gotham City's crime alley. Traumatized by their deaths, he devoted his life to becoming the world's greatest weapon against crime, the Batman. To become the ultimate vigilante, the Dark Knight disciplined his mind and body to reach the pinnacle of mental and physical superiority in his relentless pursuit of justice. First, before we begin, I'd like to thank the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did take the time and provide this sample of the Page Punchers Batman that we could have a look at in this video review. Grabbing now the tape measure just to see how tall Page Puncher's Batman stands, I'm going to go past the top of his head and instead go to the point of his ears. That's the highest point. The figure stands about 6.5 inches in height, or is about 16 centimeters tall. Being that Batman is the second Page Puncher figure we looked at here on this channel, I'm going to slide over Bats right now and free up a little bit of space to bring in Soups. Here's what he looks like next to the Page Puncher's Superman. You know, even though the face is a little jarring on Superman, it actually made for a nice looking figure. You can definitely see they go with a more darker, kind of dingier color scheme when it comes to both Superman and Batman. Some of the things that saw their inclusion with Superman are in fact also packaged along with Batman, like for example the trading card. The trading card, just to reach off and bring in the one that came included with Superman, you'll notice right away that it's the exact same image. Part of me, while still liking the art that they've used and selected, would also have appreciated that they could have used something different so that Superman's would have had a different illustration or different art on the front than what we get for Batman. Because if you are going to be collecting the 4 figures from the Page Punchers we've gotten so far, I think you're pretty much going to be getting the exact same card. The only thing that's notably different is the fact that Batman's got obviously Batman on the top, Superman has obviously Superman. One thing is different, though, is if you flip around the back of the cards, different portraits are used for the corners. Superman's respectively in the corner, there's Superman, and then, of course, Batman does have his own picture with their own names, and, of course, different read-ups, too. Now, if you are interested, you can certainly pause and read this for yourself. It happens to also be the same thing I read at the beginning of the review to save yourself the trouble. Save you guys the trouble. So I'm going to move those cards out of the way. The figure also comes include the exact same comic that came included also with Superman. And just to show you the proof is in the pudding, this is the one that came included with Superman. And just to show you as well, the pages, when you'll see from the front, are going to be exactly the same. There's Superman's. And again, just to flip through, the exact same panels, also there in Batman. And that's okay, too, because, like, if you say, for example, collect the Master Universe Origins figures, all of those Origins figures of the same wave come include the exact same comics. So I don't mind at all that they include the exact same comic. One comic, in fact, I could actually store away on bag and board, and the other one I could actually sit through and read and not worry that I'm curling the pages or doing any damage to the artwork. I mean, like, the artwork is so good on the inside of these. Like, look at Swamp Thing right now, for example, battling Black Adam. Hope at some point we do get ourselves a Swamp Thing. I mean, look what short work he makes of Swamp Thing. But yeah, just really great looking artwork. The artwork is all the thing that really draws me in. If the art isn't good on comics, then I won't even bother reading the issue. But this is the kind of artwork that would pull me in right away and make me more interested to read the rest of it. I'm going to put that to the side as well. The figure also comes included with the same black display stand. I mean, it's not even just really the Page Punchers, but really all the figure lines from DC Multiverse have, in fact, come included with this type of display stand. Yes, there probably could have been an opportunity that they could have printed Page Punchers to the top, so you feel like this stand is unique and not found anywhere else. But what you at least get is a DC logo down below, and then what you still get is always the singular peg that's going to plug to the underside of Batman's feet. I almost kind of feel like the figure needs it a little bit because he is a little wobbly. We're going to talk more about that in a moment. But yeah, you get all those same things. Trading card, comic, display stand. It's okay with me. What you do get, though, differently that come included with Batman is he gets himself a Batarang. It is still thick, though. I mean, so all the accessories have been pretty consistent when it comes to pretty thick plastic that they've used. I wish they honestly could make these accessories just a tad bit thinner, so they're not as thick as what they are. But it's a nice looking Batarang. It kind of really reminds me of Pattinson's Batman logo. In fact, I see a lot of Robert Pattinson's design sort of influenced here in Batman's costuming, as well as some other things as well that we'll talk more about in a moment. The Batarang does fit into only one of his hands, as the other hand is closed shut as a fist. So you really only have one option available for displaying Batman with a Batarang. Choose wisely. It is this hand here. You really didn't even have to choose wisely. It's this hand over here. Putting that to the side, getting a closer look now at Batman. Now, heavily influenced by Lee Bermejo's Batman design. I mean, very much in the way they've sculpted the face and painted the face, and even really like the looking of his body. But I kind of get a little bit of the cues of like Dark Knight Returns Batman as well. You know, I kind of get a little more of the vibe of Robert Pattinson's Batman, kind of more in like this area here, the way the emblem is done, for example. I think Bermejo's Batman actually has the emblem a little higher up and a more point in the middle for the bat. This is a little bit more smaller in size than Lee Bermejo's Batman, but he definitely has, I feel, the vibe of like Robert Pattinson's Batman, the way they've designed the logo. Get back to that. First, let's have a look at the head sculpt. This is where I very much kind of get the vibe of a Dark Knight Returns Batman, the way they've kind of given him a grizzled look to his face. The expression is fantastic on this Batman. I like that they've also added a little bit of shade down below where the stubble has started to develop. It's a good-looking Batman head sculpt all around. He's a very wider, square-headed Batman in this case. The white eyes are nicely painted there as well. Really like that they've added the gray. I mean, this would be a part in the figure you would think would just be left off, but instead they actually went in there and painted the gray. I think that's a really nice touch. Head sculpt is good on this guy. The coloring, I feel, is one part of coloring to the character is kind of in the costume that bothers me. It's kind of a gray, but when you're looking at it, I see very much like green tints to the gray. It's like a greenish gray. And I find it throws the coloring of the costume off for me. I wish that the costume honestly was a little more closer to being gray than what we're actually getting right here. You know, as a comparison, let's see if I can grab something here on the side. Unprepared. But just put him next to, say, for example, Three Jokers Batman. Very much, there's no argument that that's obviously a gray. But then when you compare it next to what we get in here with the Page Punchers Batman, I mean, obviously you're getting a little bit shorter of a figure, but it definitely seems like there's a little more of a greenish tint to the gray. I don't know how well I like the idea of that coloring. Kind of wish it was just more of a very medium gray instead of adding the greenish tint. He is more armored up, though. You can kind of see like his costume is made of more panels than anything else. He's got them like more in the shoulders, for example, and like even like his arms, it looks like they're just made of plates over top of an existing suit, just to bring his arms up so you can kind of see all the detail work that they put to the body here. Other than just really the coloring that they decided to go with, I really like the look of the suit quite a lot. There is a little latch here onto the side, but while you may think it's there to hold the Batarang, there really isn't. I mean, you could kind of slide the Batarang up into the loop, but he doesn't. I mean, it kind of does an all right job of holding it, but I don't think it's really there for the purpose of holding the Batarang. But there's a place technically they can store it if you don't want to have it in Batman's hands. He has the, of course, Batman logo there slightly raised on the front of his utility belt, and all kind of same similar sized pockets here on the front, and then get a little bit smaller as you go around. There are a few little areas, like for example, this part right here probably could have been colored a little bit different, so it wasn't the same coloring as the rest of the belt. But I do like the look of the utility belt. I'm just not so used to always seeing a utility belt that has the bat emblem on the front. I kind of really like just a regular square belt buckle instead. Nice texturing that they've done to the suit itself. His gauntlets do have still the spikes that stick out. They're painted nicely in silver. He's got little knuckles there on the end. Kind of in a way, looking at it like this, reminds me a little bit of Ben Affleck's Batman suit in a way as well. There's really like a lot of influences I see in this particular Batman design suit. Let me know what you also see maybe when you're looking at the suit itself. Again, you got all these kind of interesting panels. Nothing is really colored other than just, I'm guessing, the coloring of the plastic. The lower trunks, for example, are made of softer plastic. They're obviously there for a reason. That's just to conceal the joint when we talk more about the articulation. And of course, he's got these big, bulky boots here. Nice sculpting on the back, but again, you're only really relying on the black plastic. Would have been nice if they could have added just a little bit of paint, but I think for what it is, it's a nice looking figure. The one other thing I'm not really crazy about, this kind of goes back to when we looked at the Page Puncher Superman. I don't like the look of the cape. The cape to me kind of looks like a crumpled garbage bag. I mean, it fans really wide, for one thing. I like what it does here. I like the way that you got, first of all, the points on the bottoms of the cape and how it kind of layers on top of one another. But I think almost like the cape should have been a little bit more narrow. Just again, to when we brought in the Superman, for example, the Superman sort of had this weird wavy cape at the bottom of it. It looked good at the top, and I kind of feel the same way as Batman. It looks good kind of in some areas, but I think the overall kind of comes across to me like a crumpled up garbage bag. It's a little too big for my liking, but that's just my own personal opinion. Okay, so for the articulation on this guy, let's start with his head sculpt. The head rotates all the way around. It's on a ball joint. Head looks somewhat down. You can also have it looking up, but you can probably already see there's not a whole lot of mileage that you can get from the articulation for the head. Yeah, you can hinge it back and forth, but that's really it. The figure I would have thought actually had a ball joint at the base of the neck. In actual fact, he does not. So that's as much as you can actually get from Batman's head. The arms come out. Now the shoulders, what they've done here is they've attached the shoulders almost where you would think the bicep would be, but it actually seems like it's pegged right there. You can see it's just before you get to the bicep. They've done that so that at least it doesn't limit the arm articulation, but I feel like still the flaps of those shoulder pads do get in the way a little too much. You can still bring the arms forward, and you can still bring them back, of course, but it's more when you're hinging it outward this way, or when you're rotating it, that you find that you're hitting that shoulder pad all the time. Figure does have a double hinge on the elbow. He does also, of course, have the hands rotation all the way around. And then his upper torso does have a ball joint, as well as a lower torso ball joint as well. When you look at it sort of from the side, you almost think that this part is sculpted and separate, these parts here, separate from his mid-torso. But they're actually, in fact, together. It's just they've really carved in that detailing to the side of the body. Once again, the legs do split. They're on ratcheted joints. You can take those legs and move them forward, move them back. Swivel slightly, mild swivel at the top of the thigh. Double hinge on the knee. Then there's no real articulation here for the boot, but there is at least articulation where you can rock the ankle back and forth this way. You can move it up and down this way. And there's toe articulation as well. Because he also does have a very large cape, I find this particular Batman does have a little more of a balancing issue when it gets him to stand. I mean, he does have, at least to his credit, ankle articulation, but I find I really have to have the figure leaning a little bit more forward because he's got so much cape behind him. Once again, we can just move this guy over, hope that he still stands, and bring in then Superman so you can see once again. The page punchers are definitely a different approach when it comes to the character's designs. Superman was more of a classic design for a suit, but his head sculpt was a little something different that we're not used to seeing with Superman figures. Batman has a more recognizable head sculpt, but the coloring of his costume kind of has, again, that slight greenish tint that I find is not off-putting, but certainly noticeable when I'm seeing the suit on the shelf. To wrap up things here in final looks, as we have a look at Page Puncher's Batman one last time before this review ends, you know, I gotta say, I still overall like the figure. I like the way it's been heavily influenced by Lee Bermejo's design of Batman. Yeah, there are a few little things that have tweaked slightly different. I get very much the influence of the Dark Knight Returns Batman when I'm looking at the head sculpt. I really like the head on Batman quite a lot here, especially the way they've added the gray in his chin. The things I did comment on, things I'm not as crazy about, you could say, well, those are pretty big things. You didn't like the wrinkled cape, and you certainly don't like the coloring of his costume. Wouldn't that be a deal breaker for you? For all intents and purposes, you could say yes, but I'm also having to factor in as well that I've got this figure right now spinning around with 3 studio lights shining down on him right now that maybe, yeah, it stands out a little bit more than if you just had it in a natural environment with regular light source hitting it. The cape, yeah, is wrinkly, but how close are you going to really be getting to the cape itself when you're having it displayed on the shelf? And not to mention as well, you're also going to be looking at the figure, I'm guessing, from the front, not necessarily from the back. The cape has a very wide sculpt to it, which does, to its credit, does look good when you're looking at the figure from the front. And the greenish coloring, even more, is apparent when you're obviously displaying it with another Batman figure. But if you have it on its own, and you're having it on a shelf, and you don't have all these big honking studio lights shining down on it, the greenish gray that I pointed out in this review may not look as obvious as perhaps what we're seeing right now. I still like the sculpting of the figure, and I might even just say I think it's painted a little bit better than Superman we looked at before. While I do like the classic suit on Supes, I think like the Batman looks to be a better looking figure, especially the way they painted the head sculpt. What do you guys think? What do you guys think, first of all, of the Batman? Do you think like his suit is a little too greenish gray? Do you think that's a problem? Do you think the cape is too wrinkly? Let me know down below in the comments section. And of the 2 figures we've looked at, the Page Puncher's Now Superman and Page Puncher's Now Batman, which do you think is a better looking figure? Also, let me know down below in the comments section. And once again, a big thank you to the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide the sample of Page Puncher's Batman that we could have a look at in this video. If you enjoyed this review, hit it with a like. If you're loving the content you're seeing and do want to stick around for more, then make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and turn on the bell notification. And of course, while we have finished up things with the Cape Crusader from the Page Punchers line, there's still a couple of other Page Puncher figures that we are going to be looking at in upcoming reviews, not to mention a whole ton of new DC Multiverse and McFarlane Toy reviews coming your way as well. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.